Hello and welcome to Walk the Talk, our version of a podcast where you walk if you want to, while we do the talking. So if you're up for it, plug in your earphones and listen while you take us for a walk. Use this time to move your body and nourish your mind. I'm Sarah Mayo, one of the co-founders and trainers at Point 3, and I will be hosting this episode of our Walk the Talk, the next in our series aimed at HR professionals, business leaders, and anyone who's interested in the mental health and well-being of people in the workplace. So on to today's conversation, one where we talk about many things, including getting the basics right. The basics being that of culture and values. They might sound basic, but are they actually that easy to put into practice? Let's see what today's guest has to say. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Gita Singham-Willis, founding partner at Cadence Innova, now Strategic Engagement Director at Transform. Welcome, Gita.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, let's get started. So, Gita, that was a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah.
In your own words, please, could you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your role and your experience and perhaps a perspective about well-being and mental health in the workplace?
Right. Okay. Well, I did. So I was the founding partner with two other colleagues of Cadence for many years, about 20 years we ran that company. So we've just sold to Transform UK last year, so it's a whole new setup, but it's really a positive setup. So we found a partner, I guess, in crime that does the things that we didn't do, so we can join the two together. I'll explain that in a little bit. What I guess my journey has been is through I started life as a manufacturing engineer, so I was running factories all over the place, which was very interesting, and learned a lot about resilience. Maybe not so much about health and well-being. I think that was back in those days. I think when we started Cadence, I went through a few consultancies prior to that, but when we started Cadence, it was very much about starting a different type of consultancy. So alongside the sort of diversity aspects of that and what that meant and the kind of people we employed, it was a lot about culture and values, and well-being and mental fitness, I guess, is a very important part of that. So I think that's where that started, and that's sort of been part of a thread that goes through everything we do. Part of the reason that we joined Transform was the fact that we are culturally very aligned. So the interest in social impact, the interest in a diverse workforce, the interest in making sure that we are doing what our clients want to do, but collaborating and being quite open about it is all good, and that sort of makes for a good combination. We sort of brought in the management consultancy side to what they already had, and they've got big tech practice. So in a sense, we're joining the dots so that we can do some of the upfront policy program design type, some of the organizational change, and they can fill all of the tech gaps and build all the systems. And so between us, what we're trying to do at the moment is interweaving those things so it's very seamless and people can work together easily and quickly and agilely in this world. So that's what we're doing now.
Well, congratulations, firstly. And I suppose, I said it before, but I suppose a lot of change, which is kind of what your business is all about. So now
Yes,
it's sort of
indeed.
change that you're adapting to internally, which presumably, is challenging, but also exciting because that's what you're used to.
I think that we are. We've always said through this process that sort of 1 + 1 = 3. So we need to make sure that works. So it is exciting. The things that we can do now together are be really, really amazing and interesting in this new world of tech that we are going into, or in, I should say. So that's been very interesting. We've been building the business so that it's very, it's a new business. It's not bolting two bits together. It's making it a seamless organization where everybody's sort of together. So we've changed the structure, changed the operating model, which is really good. And we're going through the process. We've rebranded. We're going through the process of looking at our values and behaviours. So it is like building that new business together, which is also very exciting.
Exciting. All right, well, let's get started with some warm-up questions that we ask all of our guests. So, Gita, 1 or 2 words to describe how you're feeling right now.
Right at this minute, right now.
Right now, at this minute.
I think, well, I'm interested in the conversation that we're going to have, and so that's, I suppose, interested and reflective and curious. I guess that's probably too many words, but there you go. That's
well,
that's
1,
how
2, 3, whatever comes out. We love starting our meetings and our training with this little sort of check-in. We see this as sort of data, and it's a great way to kind of connect with yourself, but also for us to connect as well. We talk a lot about well-being non-negotiables, those things that we do to day to day or week to week to sort of prioritize and manage your well-being. What are some of your well-being non-negotiables, Gita?
So I must say I've struggled with being non-negotiable. With when you're running your own business, sometimes you get a bit sucked into that, so it's a bit 24/7. But I have got better, and I am trying to prioritize some of the things that just make you feel better. So I try and walk every day. So I do take an hour out to do that and make sure I'm getting out, moving from my desk. So I do that, and I do exercise. That's quite important to me. And also I'm trying now to sort of concentrate on eating better and making sure I'm not skipping meals and all of that stuff. So it's the basic things I think I'm getting to grips with at the moment. But that's my aim.
Yeah, well, sometimes the basic things are the hardest things, aren't they? But thank you for honesty.
Yeah, I think it's the habits. You get out of how you have to build habits, and building new habits, as Michael Mosley said, is very difficult. So trying to do that, I think, is important.
Well, remembering those small things that we can do to really support ourselves. And what about values? You mentioned that you're going through a process with Transform at the moment to sort of look at your company values. What about your sort of personal values, Gita? What are 1, 2, 3 values that feel important to you right now?
I think, and this is, I suppose, based on global context as much as what's going on in my life and with business. I think it's for me, sort of kindness is one of the first ones, I would say. I think we need to be kinder to each other. There's a lot going on. Negotiating that is difficult for a lot of people, and people have very different opinions about things. So if we're not kind and we're not listening to each other, then that's not going to move things on. So that one's important. What's also always been important to me is collaboration. I think that's key to a lot of the things that we did in Cadence, making sure that people are collaborating and supporting each other. I think the other one I'd say, oh gosh, I've probably got another couple. Resilience is important to me, and I think that's and building that resilience is kind of everyone's duty to themselves, but also to help each other build that resilience. And again, that goes back to global context as much as anything else. And then then I suppose the forward thinking one is more about learning and curiosity. So I think it's always important to be learning, and to be learning, you need to be curious, and we as consultants have to be curious about what problems we're solving, and we have to be learning, otherwise we can't solve the problems. So that's important.
And I think curiosity sits nicely with kindness, doesn't it? Because
Mhm.
when we're curious, you know, we can't be judgmental in that moment. So it
Yeah.
helps with collaboration. I
Yes.
suppose it
Yeah.
kind of brings them all
It kind of brings
together.
them all together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very true. I'm just trying to make sure that we are thinking further than the individual.
Amen to that. What about a quote or a proverb that inspires you, that you live by day to day?
Gosh, day to day. That's tough, isn't it? Right, and live by day to day. I think there's a couple of things that I thought about. One, and I think they're things that I want to sort of they're good for me because they will make me think further forward, I think. So the basis one, I guess, is the Gandhi proverb about well, be the change you want to see in the world,
Oh,
because I think that's really important, because there's so much you can do, and there's so much you don't do because you worry about all sorts of things, and I think you just have to get out there and do it. And then the other one that's John Amici, who I quite like listening to every now and then. He's quite cool in the way he expresses himself. But he said it's not about being perfect, it's about being better than you were yesterday. So
nice.
this is also kind of like forward thinking. So they both fit together quite
Yeah.
nicely in that. It's like trying to constantly think, what can I do that's
And
different, better, be a
yeah,
change, be
and
a
very
force for good.
empowering.
Mm,
Because I
yeah,
think there's a lot in life we can often feel like, well, that's out of our control, and
yeah,
I can't make a difference in that
yeah,
big
yeah.
global kind of issue or whatever it is. But no, we can all make a
We can
difference.
all make a
Yeah.
difference. And I think it's amazing. I see certainly lots of young people setting up social
Mm.
enterprise and things like that, and they are making a difference, and a massive difference with very little kind of experience in it. But just the willingness to keep going, I think.
Yeah, very inspiring. And the ripple effects hopefully will be felt
Yeah.
far and wide. We're going to talk a bit about leadership
Mhm.
today. What does leadership mean to you?
Gosh, leadership. I think this sort of stems to links to the kindness theme.
Mm.
I think leadership is support and enablement, empowering other people. I think it's not about, whilst you do sometimes have to take the steer, and not be autocratic, but be a bit more forceful in your leadership depending on what's going on in the situation. That's why you have to keep adapting your leadership style to depend to the situations. But I think generally, um, I think it's about making sure everyone's is enabled to do what they need to be able to do, and you want that relationship to be very open so that people can approach you and can talk about what they think should be happening. You want as much feedback into your organization as
Mm.
possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about that. It's probably the kind leadership type
Mm.
thing that I would go with.
So we'll dig into that
Mm.
shortly. Um, a leader that has perhaps inspired you in your career, and why?
Um, Another difficult one, because there's a lot of inspirational people around. I mean, I meet a lot of inspirational people who are leading some of the
Mm.
sort of the charity sectors, and some of the actual things that are making a difference to people's lives. So there's a whole load of names I could say in that space. I think the interesting one I was thinking about this was in somebody like Jacinda Ardern, I
Mm.
think, was a great leader. And I know she had problems at the end of her
Mm.
leadership, but I think what she was trying to do was be that kind of enabling, supportive leader. Um, and oh my gosh, she had loads to do. She when she was pregnant when she got her first prime ministerial job. So it was a hard road, and then she had to deal with COVID, and she had to be quite autocratic about that in order to do the right thing for her country. And I think she was always very forward thinking,
Mm.
and as I say, kind, but just a completely different person for some of the leaders in the world, let's say.
Indeed. And final question in the warm-up, a book or podcast that we should all be reading or listening to?
I was thinking about this as well. And so I used to read loads of books, and then I stopped reading loads of books. I used to read business books when I was in my manufacturing days. Now I don't do that anymore. What I tend to do is I do listen to a lot of podcasts. I did get into all of the politics podcasts, and I'm still kind of in that space. But I think they're very interesting. I like listening to any views around the world about global politics, and also I really liked Paul Johnson's book from the IFF, who was Follow the Money, which is a really good view from an economist that is expressed in a way that's really easy and accessible to people. So that was really interesting. So that's where I tend to go. I don't know if everyone should be listening to politics podcasts all the time. I think that's just my thing at the moment. So, and I do listen, I pick up TED Talks and things like that when they're useful and interesting topics. So it's just interesting. I think it's about, again, it's the curiosity thing, isn't it? Keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, try and get as many views. It's very easy for some of us to get into a bubble and stay in that bubble because it feels safer. But you really need to know what everyone's thinking.
Well, and it's that whole sort of confirmation bias, isn't it? It's very easy to just listen to everything that kind of supports your belief set or current thinking on something. And so actually to challenge that, I do have to remind myself to try and listen to a variety of different podcasts for that very reason. Okay, you feeling warmed up?
Yes, I'm feeling very warmed up. I don't know if that's the same thing.
Brilliant. All right. So thinking more about leadership, our leadership survey came out a month or so ago, and it revealed a couple of key sort of people challenges, which I shared with you. The main findings were around the need for leaders to invest in middle management training as a kind of linchpin for sort of organizational health. The need to reskill and lead through change, particularly in response to AI disruption. The need to create environments that prioritize psychological safety and well-being, and the need for leadership to adapt to accommodate sort of generational diversity, but also neurodiversity. And then finally, about reaffirming the visibility and impact of DEI in kind of shifting priorities. A lot there, but I'd be super interested in your take, particularly, I'm sure from an organization you have an opinion on all of those things. Do they feel relevant? Do they resonate? Which feels most challenging right now?
I think they all resonate in the sense that they are about the topics of today, aren't they? I think it's interesting, the middle management one, because I think that's something that's been there forever. It's one of those ones that and it's always a difficult one. It's always where people struggle. I think if you say that, I know lots of sort of larger companies that have got very strong senior leaders who are, walking the walk and setting the culture, and then that sometimes does not drop down to the other levels through middle management. And I think that's a lot of it is about training and upskilling, but supporting and mentoring and all of that things. Those things. I mean, I think that the ones that I think are more, I suppose, significant now are the response to the DEI issues in the US, and therefore what do we say? And some people have gone backwards, and some people are doubling down on DEI and why it's important. And actually, some of the things that have been said are not particularly true. So you need to understand what it is you're trying to achieve. So I think that's an important one. That in the context of AI is quite interesting, because AI and reskilling and all of the things that we have to learn about, which is basically the way that the work is changing, and will be changing over the next few years, and it'll probably be quite fast. And given that the speed that technology is changing, we'll have to be fast about reacting and responding to that. So I've been talking to lots of people about what that sort of future of work might look like, and that what does that mean to reskilling and recruitment, and how do we sort of give people the support they need, and what are the key things that people actually need to be skilled at, because how do you get the training and the expertise when you haven't done effectively the grunt work that you do when you normally go into a business? So you end up sort of losing that kind of expertise and critical thinking and judgment that you really need. So where do people get that? How do you teach them that? So I think it's really important to look at the whole of that kind of world of work and how it's changing when you're looking at all of those skills.
Yeah, I suppose what didn't really come out in that summary there was the way that people are working sort of from a hybrid perspective, and how are they learning from observation or following, the young talent coming through? How are they integrating and learning from their leaders?
And I think it's going to be more challenging when you've got AI taking out a big layer of what you would normally have as learning. So for a consultant, the way you learn from beginning is you're doing the PowerPoint presentations yourself, you're creating the stories, you're doing the grunt work analysis. You learn a lot through that, and you learn what works, what doesn't work. You learn you can't sort of, there's a lot of expertise that you're building up over the years. And trying and failing also is helpful to learn. So all of those things, if you're bypassing a lot of that,
outsourcing it,
how do you have those skills, and how do you make sure that your staff are prepared to have those skills? And there's a whole lot of another spectrum of stuff in terms of, well, what are the human skills that are necessary in the world of work, and which will become more important. And some of that is about diversity, and some of that is about making sure AI is ethically sound. So there's a lot of thinking around that area at the moment, and there's a lot to be done around that area. And I think I'm trying to remember what the other ones were on your list.
Yeah, we've pretty much covered them all. I suppose psychological safety and well-being.
I think, and that's obviously got more important since COVID. Part of that, and that again, they all sit together, these things, the sort of neurodiversity, the generational differences, that's all part of diversity inclusion. Having safe spaces to talk to people, being able to express yourself, and have a sort of open conversation with people is very important. So psychological safety, to do that, you need to create those safe spaces in the workplace. I think what's interesting now is with some of the things that are going on in the world, and the opinions, I talked about this a bit before, but for the different opinions that have to come together. And so having an open conversation is really important, but being able to have an open conversation and not judgmental conversation, just a curious conversation, is really important for people to be able to get on with each other and work together, because some of the emotions are so high in some of these situations.
And I suppose it's accepting that we're not all going to agree with everything, and that's okay as well.
Absolutely.
But let's all at least be heard.
Yes.
And not try and force perhaps our opinion over someone else's.
Yes. And I think the lines are blurring between what is your sort of personal view and what you express maybe on your social media feeds, and what you can express as a colleague and a company member. So I think controlling that, or being very open about what the rules and the guardrails are around that to make sure that people don't get themselves in trouble, or it's things that are separated enough for that, because that can be very, very blurry, grey area to get into.
Yes. And so are these topics that you're talking to your clients about as well? And I suppose which of those do you feel is the sort of the most challenging at the moment, the one that's people are coming to you?
Well, I think our clients are generally in the space where they're trying to face into the new tech world, and what do they do with that? So it's very kind of specific around potential use of tech and what do they do. That tends to drive them into use of data. How good is your data? Which data are they using? All of that stuff. So getting your data foundations right is absolutely key to doing that. So the conversations we're having with clients are largely around that, but there is a link into future of work and AI, ethics, and what does this mean in terms of DEI. So they kind of link together when you start sort of building that. What essentially they're doing is going from piloting things to actually rolling them out to scalable models, and I think that's where it's getting tough for people to control it.
And you mentioned that you're going through a process of reviewing sort of cultures and values for transform. I suppose, you know, how kind of foundational do you believe this is for in this day and age?
I think you have to have your basis of values. Your values enable you to describe your behaviors, and therefore you know what is good and bad behavior in an organization. Otherwise you really can't call it out if you don't know, you haven't described it. And I think it's really important to everybody to understand their individual values and their company values and make sure they're aligned, because that will tell you if you're in the right place or not. I think you always go back to your values. I mean, effectively, that's what we went back to when we were talking to Transform about Cadence coming in, and about what our values were and were they aligned, and our cultures fit together. All of those things were the basis of the conversation. It wasn't the afterthought of the deal, in a sense. It was the reason we said, yeah, let's give this a go. So I think it's really important to make sure everyone understands what they are, lives them. How do you make them alive? How do you make those behaviors? You don't want stuff on the walls that just says what your values are. You want to be able to really buy into it and think about it when you're doing your work. Certainly in client work, you want to be thinking, is this the right thing that we're doing here? So I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, and sort of any ideas really, because, you know, I think it's quite common to come across organizations that, you know, their values, you see them on the wall, to your point, but, you know, are they truly being lived and breathed? You know, what are some ideas or some good ways of doing that effectively?
Yeah, I think once you've established, I mean, establishing your values means you're getting the buy-in from people. So I think what you need to do is involve people in the process, so that you're getting sort of what is the temperature of the company. Now, obviously, if you have a massive company, not everybody can get involved in every set of values, but it is important to have a breadth of opinion there. I think that's the start point. Then the communication around what those values mean, the communication around what that means in terms of how do you behave. The visibility of leadership in terms of living the values and behaving in the right way is important. I think if you're in a business like ours, you're obliged, I think, to speak to your clients about your values and make sure that they see those values as well. So it's sometimes a difficult conversation to have. I don't tend to necessarily want to engage in that kind of conversation, but it's more about, but in an informal way, you can definitely find out if you're doing what it says on the tin. And sometimes you get spontaneous feedback, which is nice. But I think the important thing is to keep looking at it, keep it alive, keep doing the things that look at those values and behaviours that people buy into. So it's embedded in everybody, not just on the wall.
Yeah, and almost like behaviours are rewarded that are kind of values aligned.
Yeah, I mean, I think your performance framework should always be a mixture of different things, and values and culture is part of that. So if you are behaving in the right way, you should, that's part of your performance conversations and development as well. So I think that's definitely something that needs to be in people's development plans and performance plans.
So speaking of performance, I mean, of course, you know, as a business, leaders are, you know, interested in optimizing the performance of their people, and engagement, well-being, you know, we believe is the starting point for all of that. I mean, what role do you think leadership plays, or leaders play, in helping support the well-being needs of people within an organization?
I think leadership is about, well, firstly, leadership is about showing up to those values and those behaviors. So you need to be able to demonstrate that you're doing what you're asking other people to do, right? So that's the start point. I think you need to have the foundations, you need to have policies in place and all of those things, but I think you also need to give people permission to be individuals and have individual conversations about what they need. So that helps you actually develop your plans, and obviously you will have like well-being plans and strategies that you want to look at, but you try and get as much external input into that as you can, I think. And I think for the leadership, it is just about emphasizing all those things, and also trying to get that feedback. I think for a leader, it's difficult to get feedback. Sometimes people are more reluctant to talk to you about the things that they don't want to, you know, aren't good. So keeping your door open, but also talking to people, I think, is important to check in.
That's definitely the area, sort of speaking up and being able to feel like you can share feedback, but also receive feedback. You know, that's certainly the area that we, you know, are talking lots to our clients about. Let's think about Cadence, because perhaps it's too early days in terms of form at the moment, in terms of the ways that you created that culture, where people sort of really felt like they could speak up and come to you and felt supported. That was very much at the heart of your business. What did you do differently or particularly well there?
I think we had we had a very good, or have a very good HR manager, people manager, who was very good at doing that sort of initial interviewing and recruiting through a values-led way. So we had the right people coming into the business, which is nice, because that means that they're sort of thinking in the same way around values, not thinking in the same way around everything. And I think that helped us start. We wanted to create a very open culture, so we wanted to be quite flat. We didn't want a traditional line management structure, and we were benefit of being small, I guess, is that you can do that. So we set up a family structure, which was more about getting people of different levels of experience to be together in different family groups, which would be your support structure when you weren't on a client site. When you're on a client site, you have an assignment manager who manages the project, but that's very much about the work as opposed to other things. They will then feed back to HR whether they do development plans and things like that. But the main reason for the support family was to talk about things like development, talk about things like promotion, talk about other things that are affecting the company, and making sure that that's all sort of in the environment. You don't have to worry about that sort of line management relationship. You don't have to worry about the level that you're at. You have to you're just able to have those conversations with individual people, and you can get mentors and people that you feel more comfortable with talking about specific things. But then we had that as a kind of communication cascade as well, so that bolstered it. But that meant that there wasn't really a hierarchy in terms of level. It was just levels of experience. People had different levels of experience, and you learn from more experienced people. But it doesn't feel that you have to go through this kind of like 6-month objective setting plans and all of those things. You have to. It was an ongoing. We had a process by which we have ongoing planning. So people are encouraged to just spend time looking at their development plans all the time. So it wasn't a kind of, you have to do this every so many months. Yeah. So it was very much trying to build that kind of adult relationship between everybody. And so that helps in terms of like speaking to leaders, and we've never had any problems with people wanting to tell us anything. We had all sorts of open conversations, and lots of open conversations in terms of especially through COVID, we had twice weekly stand-up meetings, which were just designed for people to drop in and chat, basically. And if we wanted another session to talk about something serious, then we'd set it up. But the idea was to keep the conversation going, keep people talking to each other. And we've always been like that. And we've always been very transparent as well about what we were doing. So every month in the monthly staff meetings, we would talk about everything, financials, everything's open book kind of thing. So people were very happy to question all the money as well, the finances, which is good. And yeah, sometimes you can answer those questions in a way that they would like you to. Sometimes you have to sort of be quite sensible about what you're saying. But it was open, so the conversation was there, always had. And then we had the other thing that we had, I suppose, another pillar was the employee ownership scheme.
Yes.
So we did set that up specifically to enable people to have shares in the company, so they felt some degree of ownership of what was going on. So, which is really important. So
it's very sort of empowering.
Mm-hmm.
Everything there that you've talked about feels like you're empowering people on their own development journey to be kind of their own architect of that all the time, but empowering people to speak up, come to these stand-ups, but also, they feel a sense of ownership of the business and its success.
So it was important to sort of set that up, I think, because to keep that open transparency. I think everyone felt that they kind of knew what was going on. They could talk about what was going on with anyone in the room from all levels of experience, and have a voice.
It's not easy, is it, as a leader, to be so open? That is a very vulnerable thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to accept that you'll get questions that you don't know if you can answer them. I think that's the thing. And sometimes you're going to have to, sometimes you're going to have to be a bit more. You have to be a bit more authoritarian in terms of what you say than what you would want to be generally. But I think that's in the minority of cases. I think generally you can have a conversation, and if you've developed an adult relationship with all those people, then you have the conversation. You decide, and then that's it. That's kind of at least you've had the conversation. Not everyone can do everything that they want.
Yes, I suppose people just want to know that they're being heard, and again, they've had that chance to share. And
if you have a valid concern or something, then obviously we'd like to look at it. It's not. We wouldn't shut down anything that was a not useful conversation to have. And you always learn something from a conversation, because if you're not hearing it, you won't be able to change your direction or improve things. So actually just hearing, if enough voices are telling you that something's not quite in there, it's not quite right for them, then you've got an opportunity to do something about that.
And something you said there about during COVID, you had you upped the amount of sort of stand-ups that you had to keep people connected. Connection is something that we talk about a lot, and I think I'd love to hear some examples of how you can keep a kind of a remote. You're a consultancy, so you have people in other businesses. How do you keep people, and of course working in lots of different ways at home and not necessarily all together? How do you keep people connected? What are some simple tools that
so and now we're very lucky that we have tools that enable us to communicate when we're all in different places. So there are, there's so many channels. We have a lot of channels of
too many channels.
Too many channels, probably. Yeah, I think there's always too many channels. But I think so. As a sort of, I can talk more from the Cadence aspect because we're still obviously going through some of this at the moment. But the connection, so the family structure provided some sort of connection. So the families, all of these people could do meetings, hybrid meetings, all of that sort of thing. So it's about having those kind of communications as well. The communications that were hybrid on a twice weekly basis were good ways of keeping people connected. But if you notice that there are people that are not connecting in on some of those things, then it's more about getting some time with them and checking in and making sure they're all right. And you might ask the family to do that. Or you might ask, you might have an individual person that's better at doing that. And our HR manager was very good at checking in on people as well during that period, because obviously it's very difficult for some people more than others, I'd say. So that's sort of the way we sort of kept in touch. When you think about keeping in touch, because you've got a lot of people on client side or doing client work, it is about having those sort of mandatory monthly meetings, those kind of things that are helpful to get people back together. I mean, there's got to be a reason that people don't want to get back together, and you have to explore what that might be. Why are people not joining? Is the timing wrong? Sometimes it's simple things like, if you have a breakfast meeting, it might be easier for people to get there than staying late at night and not being able to get home. This is the things that you have to worry about when you're having a diverse group of people of different generations, with different circumstances. All those things. It's like making sure all of the events that you have are inclusive of everyone for some reason, and there will be things that people say they can't do, and so you have to sort of work around that, but try and have a breadth of things that people will come to. And sometimes it was just as much as getting client teams to come into the office and use our space, because then they see other people as well. So it's a mixture of all sorts of things, but you have to keep watching it, I think.
Conscious.
Yeah, you have to keep conscious. It's not something that will just happen on its own. You have to keep looking at it, keep making sure you're adjusting things, doing things differently. I mean, a lot of the big four, I guess, are trying to bring all their people into the office all the time. I don't think that's going to work particularly. I don't think that's the expectation that certain generations have, and especially the ones who've sort of come to work after COVID. They've never been in an office for 5 days a week. I think there's a benefit to being in the office and being with people to learn, which so new people can benefit from. So we used to sort of do that occasionally. It's like some people would come into the office more often than others just for that reason.
But I suppose you've always been, even prior to COVID, as a consultancy, remote. So
the again, as I say, the family thing is very important in those areas, because then people have somewhere home to go to when they're not on the client side, and it's not a threatening home. It's like a safe space for them. And it's a good way of keeping the communication going across the organisation. So that worked really well from that perspective, because people in the families are all doing different projects in different clients.
Yeah, well, that's probably very good for innovation as well, and getting new ideas.
And learning.
Challenging, ways of doing things and learning. Any other advice as we sort of near the end, Gita, for businesses listening in terms of how to sort of prioritize the wellbeing needs and the development of people in turn, I suppose, in turn to optimize performance for the organization?
Yeah, I may have covered most of it. I think you you need to just know what you're trying to do. You have to base it off your values and culture and what you're trying to do, and therefore create your well-being plans around that. I think there's lots of things you can do from, oh my gosh, you can survey people, but you may not get the right answers. You can focus group people, you may not get everybody's input, but there's a number of different things you can do to make sure you are covering your bases. But you also need to, I think it's learning from the outside as much as anything else. So learn from other companies, do your networking thing. I mean, if you're a leader, you should be talking to lots of people anyway in different places and learning from them. And I think prioritizing it as a leader, talking about it openly and talking about things that might have affected you is really helpful. So senior leaders in both Transform and Cadence would always be happy to talk about things that they were struggling with, because it meant that other people could immediately jump in and say, I feel like that too. And that makes a massive difference. So it's just being able to be that honest, open self to everybody. So it means that's again communication and how you do that.
Yeah, well, we see that's the sort of one of the most powerful things businesses can do and the leaders can do is sort of role model that vulnerability to show that no one needs to be sort of perfect,
Yes.
And it gives permission for people to maybe try something that takes them out of their comfort zone, and in turn then they grow and expand, and yes, they might make a mistake, but
That's
it's important to take that step.
yes. That's all part of learning and letting people make mistakes, I think.
Absolutely. You mentioned at the beginning the need for us as individuals to sort of take responsibility for ourselves. I think there's often a lot of pressure on the business, and we look upwards to our leaders. Or what are you doing for me to support my well-being? But actually, we need to take responsibility and accountability. What can employees do to help themselves sort of cope better with the challenges?
Yeah. I think you need to kind of know yourself a little bit and understand what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel better in yourself, and know that you need to prioritize doing those particular things. And you can have a conversation with your company about that and make sure that that's sort of in line with what their expectations are. It all fits together, but as long as you can plan that around your needs and make sure there's some time in the diary for you to do what you need to do, or whatever it is that you might need to do to prioritize your needs. I think that's important. I think making sure that you talk to people in the organization about what your needs are and what their expectations are, and where you think you need help. I mean, there's lots of assistance programs and employee assistance programs, and you've got mental health first aiders. You've got lots of people who can help you within the company, but they can also help you externally as well. So it's reaching out when you need to reach out, and making sure you don't just keep it in, I think. Talking to anybody you think is a safe person in your organization. I think having mentors and coaches effectively in the organization is helpful in and externally as well. So mentors within the company will help you with problems like that you may be going through, and help you talk that through. I think it's knowing what there is available to you, knowing yourself and what you need, and reaching out when you need help, and understanding that that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that feels very appropriate to then sort of go on to the last question. This podcast is called Walk the Talk. How are you walking the walk, and what are you doing sort of day to day, week to week, to sort of lead by example, do you think, Gita?
I think I I try, and this is going to, it's difficult to describe. I suppose the way I try and lead is by being collaborative and listening and talking to people. So that's kind of how I do it. And supporting people. Like, people come to you for help, so you need to do that, but in a way that doesn't disempower those people. You need to make sure that they feel that they're enabled to do what they think they need to do. So it's all about that, I think. And obviously I'm trying to, I do say that I do, people know that I go for a walk in the middle of the day, so they know I'm trying to look after myself. They see me trying to feed myself better, all of those things, yeah. But I'm happy to talk about difficult subjects to people, and talk about what's going on in my life if it helps them. And also, I think, try and talk about things that I hear in the external world. So I think it's quite I guess subtle what you do. So don't sort of have a come and chat to me every Thursday or something like that, but it's more individual, on an individual basis, and just talking to people, make sure that people know that you're around to help. I think offer help and support when you can.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Gita, for your sharing such vulnerable kind of wisdom today, and it's been really interesting chatting to you about lots of different things, and we could have gone a lot deeper, but I see that the time is nearly finished. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. It's been a joy.
And thank you to our audience for tuning in today. Whatever your business challenge, we're here to support you and your people to stress less and smile more.